This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
It's not a matter of if, but when. Mars enthusiasts are certain humans will explore and eventually settle on the red planet. In the past, space missions have been led by governments, but now we're seeing more entrepreneurs and small companies joining in. I'm Emma Keeling in Innsbruck, Austria, where a group is preparing their astronauts for a very different kind of Mars mission. A friend of mine who's not particularly into science said, oh, would I enjoy Razor? And I can use myself as an example here because I really struggled with science and maths at school. And I must say, when I first started this job, I thought, oh, this is going to be really interesting. And it's just blown my mind because I have found it so exciting. It's completely immersive. You get sort of swept up in the energy and the passion and the dedication of these scientists working on these problems, seeking out solutions, finding solutions. They're dedicating, their lives to this. I mean, it's quite incredible to sort of witness it and be a part of it, and it's a huge honour to tell their stories for them. And it's mind-blowing. The shipping industry is one of the most polluting. 90% of trade is seaborne, creating 2 to 3% of the world's total greenhouse gas emissions. But this boat is on a 6-year mission around the world using solar, wind, hydrogen and battery power in an effort to prove that there is a greener way. I'm Emma Keeling here on the River Thames in London to see if the Energy Observer will be able to convince the maritime industry that what they're doing can be cleaned up. The hydrogen boat shoot was one of those stories that we thought we would turn up and it would be quite simple and straightforward. And certainly the technology on the boat it's, all of the parts of the boat, whether it be, wind or hydrogen or battery power or solar panels, all these things you can buy in shops.
So you've got this new generation, they are very light, flexible, so they are double-faced. They take up to 30% of their power from behind.
So that you can get a reflection off the water and get power from there?
Absolutely. They get the reflection from the water and from the paint because the paint is slightly metallized, which means that they are the most efficient solar panels on the market today. They are not on the market, by the way. Not yet. Do you want to see the wings working?
I'd love to see the wings.
Okay.
What blew my mind away is that they have brought all of these things together on this boat. And it's very green, and they're travelling the world saying to people, hey, all of these things you can do, even big industry, you can put this on your ships, on your boats, and make a difference. And this, they're showing people what can actually be done rather than just talking about it. So how does it work?
Fully automatically, you just don't do nothing. You just push on a button, it raises, it adjusts itself to the best angle, it creates you some apparent wings, so there is a virtuous circle, it creates its own speed, which creates some more wind, which creates some more speed, and then you just add some electricity if you need, and you've got a fabulous mix of energies.
We spent hours on there, going through the hulls, looking at the desalination plant, which helps to make the hydrogen, looking at these incredible wings, which are actually the sails, which also generate power, and the batteries. And so, we spent hours, and it's all run on this incredible computer that sort of sits there in the middle of the boat. What's the cleverest part of this hub, this brain, do you think?
So the computer will have the forecast of the light, of the sun, of the wind for the next 3 days, let's say. And it will say, okay, I have this amount of energy in hydrogen, I have this amount of energy in batteries, and I know that there will be a lot of sun tomorrow, but then I will have 3 days with just rain and heavy wind against me. So it will plan a route for you to be the most efficient from point A to point B. the objective is to be able to provide a system that can be managed by any kind of crew.
I think for me the hardest film that I've worked on would be a story about bacteriophages and how they could hopefully cure cancer, something as difficult as a rare form of brain cancer, a glioblastoma tumour. A bacteriophage, or simply phage, is a kind of virus that only infects bacteria. Thousands of varieties exist, but each variety infects only one or a few species. The phage punctures the surface of bacteria, injecting it with its own genetic material. The bacterial DNA is then modified to manufacture more copies of the phage, which eventually kills the bacteria. The phage is able to recognise its prey by proteins known as receptors, which are found on the surface of each species. When I arrived on the shoot to work with Professor Hajitu, I was a little bit bamboozled by the science, I think. But what was so incredible talking to him and the work that he's done over, a decade or more, was that, even he was saying that there's hope. And I think that when you look at some of the problems such as cancer, and it seems so big and so overwhelming, and so many of us have been affected by it. And here was this man saying that, I have hope here. I don't want you to get overexcited, but there is hope. Hope to find a cure. We met Richard and he'd had his tumour taken out, but there was a little bit left behind. So is that where your phage therapy would be used?
Surgery by itself is not enough to remove the whole tumours. It has to be combined with other therapeutic approaches like chemotherapy, radiation therapy, in order to destroy the remaining cells. But in these cells, you find what we call cancer stem cells, which are resistant to chemo and radiation therapy, from which the tumors grow back and lead to death of the patient. This is where our phage comes with this advantage, because we show that our phage can find these cancer stem cells and destroy them. The other advantage of our phages, they can be given repeatedly without any safety issues, unlike other viral therapies or chemotherapy or other therapeutic agents.
So how confident are you that phage therapy can cure glioblastoma?
To be frank, only clinical trials in human with glioblastoma will prove that. But we are optimistic. We hope it will happen. We have to live in hope.
I mean, what he was trying to do was to solve one of the hardest cancers to solve or to cure, which was a glioblastoma. A tumour in the head, the brain is protected by this blood-brain barrier. And so it's very hard for the treatments to get through there. And so a colleague of his had said, if you can solve that, then you could, solve all the cancers in the body. You can treat all the cancers in the body. And I think, yeah, it gave me hope, and I think so often we can get very overwhelmed by the things that we see on the news, and that cancer is sort of everywhere and all through our lives. And here's this man who's giving us this hope that just stick with me. Give me more time, and I think that's the frustrating thing with science. It does take time. So Richard, you were diagnosed 5 years ago,
Yep.
And what did they tell you at the time?
Bad news, you've got terminal brain cancer. It's malignant and it could grow back at any time. So within 5 days of the optician saying there's something dodgy at the back of your left eye, I was in the operation room having a 6-hour operation on my head.
We had a lovely man called Richard Preston in the film, and he had a glioblastoma in his head. It had been removed, but as he said, he was on borrowed time. He didn't know how long he'd have, because it's a very aggressive type of cancer. And I think what we wanted to do on some of our science stories, the science can be a bit heavy, but what we want to show people is that how will this change people's lives? And so we bring in somebody like Richard to sort of explain, well, this is his story. And this is how he lives, and this is what he has to think about, and this is what he has to deal with. And then we show people the science. And that helps people make that connection, because I think often there always seems to be a bit of a barrier sometimes with science. It's, it's too sciencey, it's too hard to explain. But then suddenly it all becomes very clear when you bring somebody in like Richard, and then you bring somebody in like Professor Hajitu, showing what he is doing and how he is working so hard to help people like Richard. I think it brings it home to how this kind of science can affect us. So your outlook on life is just very positive.
I try and make it as positive as possible. Because I mean, I've had the cancer, I've had it taken out, I've had the drugs. I'm just cruising along now, waiting for it to happen again. Because they say it's inevitable, it's going to happen again.
So if you had the opportunity to take part in a clinical trial, to try something new,
yes,
would you take it?
Yes. I've already decided that anything I can do to help other people is worth me doing.
I think having people who have either suffered or experienced certain diseases or afflictions, or I think it's good to help to bring them into the story. We did a very similar thing with AI dementia, where we had a woman whose father had actually eventually died from dementia. And again, it just brings it home to people that just how the science can help these people and what a difference it can make. So Jackie, do you worry about getting Alzheimer's like your dad?
Yeah, I do.
I wondered if you'd like to come along with me and try out an early diagnosis tool.
A few years ago, I think I would have been too scared, and to be honest, I'm still very scared. But I think I would like to do some testing and find out at this point.
We had a group of guys who had come up with a test, and it would show, if there were any early symptoms of something like Alzheimer's or dementia. So again, it's a little bit, it's not about prevention so much there, but it's just those early warning signs and maybe making changes earlier in your life. So sometimes science can seem a little bit too over there, but it brings it home to how can this affect my life now? And certainly the AI dementia film was one of those that showing people how that could bring change to their lives now and how that can help them.
Fill this out.
Human brain has evolved to be sensitive to pictures of animals. Why? For food or fear phenomena. We either had to run away from them or run after them. So if there is an animal in the picture, we become very sensitive to it. So images are going to be flashed by for a very short time, like this one. As soon as you see a picture of animal in the image, you press on the right side of the screen. If there is no animal, you press on the left. So let's do it now.
Okay. Oh yeah, I can see. Definitely.
The test takes 5 minutes.
Speed, speed, speed. Very important to keep the speed up.
Factors such as lack of sleep or diet can influence the results. The test is not a definitive diagnosis tool. It indicates if there is a risk.
Perfect. Let's have a look. Congratulations, you've completed the test. Oh, very good. So this is a performance you've had, which is on the healthy zone. This is the normal curve of aging, and people who score in the red zone, we are tell them that they are impaired and they need to be seeking further assessment. This is an interesting analysis, and it tells you how long you took on harder images versus easier images. So with that, we build a profile of responses that our artificial intelligence can use in order to classify you versus the historical data that we have.
So the idea is, because we want to detect subtle kind of impairments, that's why it's kind of challenging. But after the first few images, you get used to it.
All right, clammy hands. I think I'm ready to go, but would you mind leaving me alone? And if you could go as well, that'd be great. And then I just have a little bit of focus time.
Sounds great, yeah.
Wish
I'll
me luck.
come back to see the result.
Oh, that'd be lovely, thank you. All right.
So she was a little bit stressed at the beginning, but there is a warm-up period in the test, and after she passed that stage, she's now used to it and doing it very well.
I wasn't playing it up for the camera. I was genuinely nervous. It turns out I'm what's known as one of the worried well. No one wants to know they're a candidate for dementia. Don't grin at me like that. Don't grin.
How was it?
It was terrifying. I think my hands were shaking so much. I don't know. You tell me how it was. This is the tricky bit. I'm very dehydrated, by the way. That could have affected my score.
All right. No, it's great actually. You've done a very good job. Congratulations.
I can smile now. This is good.
Whether it's about your education, the home you live in, or the items you buy, your money has a story to tell. Because every business story is a human story. Global Business.
It's the disease of our time. So complicated, treatment can be a guessing game based on percentages.
Most patients are still going through chemotherapy and even radiotherapy, and sometimes they do not respond to these treatments.
The answers that we are giving to them are not the ones that they would like to hear.
Now, one scientist and her research team are seeking to remove the uncertainty.
This type of research will be enormously important because we can individualize the treatment for the patient facing us on the clinic.
There seems to be two main things that these researchers and scientists have in common. There's the enthusiasm, the curiosity, the determination, the attention to detail, the patience, which is probably one of the reasons why I'm not a scientist. But the other part of it is there tends to be a story as to why they're working on what they're working on. And often it is a personal one. One of the scientists that I spoke to recently, a Professor Rita Fior, and she was looking at using animal avatars to help with the treatment of cancer, to figure out what cancer treatment will be best for each patient. Now, the reason she got into that was her mother developed cancer, and she was shocked that there was no test that would tell them exactly what would be the better treatment, whether it would be chemotherapy or radiotherapy for her mother.
And I was discussing with a friend, oncologist, what was happening and which treatments my mom was getting. And then she told me that in another hospital, they don't give that drug anymore, they give another. And this was really a shock to me at this point, because I was not expecting that. I was expecting that all patients with that sort of tumor, that stage of tumor, would be treated the same.
Yeah. So it felt like it was a game of chance with your mum.
Exactly.
I think a lot of the time there's something that's triggered them to sort of say, hey, this is wrong. We need answers, and hey, I'm gonna find out those answers, and that seems to be the path that they walk on. Oh, wow! Look at all the fish.
So this is our tanks.
So these are your babies.
Yes. Well, adults. So these are the breeders that we cross females and males to have embryos, and then they grow to little larvae, and these are the ones that we inject in the lab upstairs.
So are you the first to work with zebrafish as avatars for cancer?
No, so when I started, I had this idea, but then I went to the literature, and there were people that were pioneers and really started. It wasn't fully optimized. The big sharks in the field were not really believing much in the model, but I wanted them to review my paper.
Oh, so they thought
to see.
They were dismissive before, and so you turned up and said, hang on, read this.
Yes.
So you decided to go to the ones who really did not believe in this model.
Yes,
you
I
wanted them to
review my paper.
Feisty, I like it.
Yes.
Good, good. And so they've now changed their mind about the zebrafish.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Every year there are around 1 million amputations. That's 1 every 30 seconds. Not everyone can afford a bionic limb or even a prosthetic. And one scientist wants to change all that. I'm Emma Keeling here at Glasgow University in Scotland, where a team is developing a 3D printed prosthetic, including sensors, wrapped in electronic skin, and it's all powered by solar energy. The solar-powered hand film was quite inspirational. And I think that was one of those films that really showed you what science can do for people. Because Professor Ravinder Dahir, he's working on a solar-powered prosthetic. The wonderful thing about this is it operates like a bionic hand, but what he wants to do is make it very, very cheap. So even people from, say, third world countries who don't have a lot of money could still have one of these because it's 3D printed. What's the difference between what you're doing here and what this is?
Well, this is the state-of-the-art prosthetic hand available in market today. Any amputee, they would like to regain the lost sensory feelings. I think it's good beginning, but the point I'm trying to make is the feeling part has to be there as well. And in this prosthetic hand, we are doing that. We are able to integrate sensors inside the 3D structure. We 3D print this, and this is soft. There are sensors in the structure itself.
I had an amputee, Corinne Hutton. She'd lost her hands and her feet to sepsis. Corinne had a bionic hand before having a double hand transplant in early 2019. I decided to bring her into the lab with the Professor Ravinda to sort of see for herself. And it was so wonderful to bring them together because you could see he was so excited and enthused by the reaction that she had over this incredible, hand that he was working on with his team. And so they sort of fed off each other, and I didn't really have to do anything. I just sort of stood back and watched this incredible sort of moment, well, there were many moments, unfold as he would explain a bit of the science to her and she would just go, wow.
If you look at our own skin, you have different receptors, mechanoreceptors, receptors for temperature, for pain.
Okay.
And then there is a local computation taking place. You are not sending all the data to the brain.
No.
So some local processing takes place at various stages, and that's how our brain is able to handle large data. Skin is a good example for us. It's a computer. So that's the kind of model in a simple way. We start with, you have one layer which is computing, another layer which is electronics, then you have touch layer. Now between touch layer and the electronics, you may also add a solar layer, a energy layer. So that makes it all energy autonomous, computing,
Are you keeping
sensing,
up
all these things
I've
together.
gone ahead thinking how far this could go.
And she was excited thinking about what this could do for people in the future. And I think it was very special for me because you put the films out there and you hope people watch them, but I was sort of watching somebody watch it in real time. And so it was really special.
All you need is, for moving hand, you need quick power.
Yeah.
You don't require that
delay.
power all the time.
Yeah.
So that quick power is good enough. You come from the supercapacitor. And it gives you touch feedback, tactile feedback, temperature feeling, pressure feeling, etc.
The camera has
Wow.
to see Corinne's face right now.
I'm following it. I'm just not quite believing it. It's incredible.
There's a lot of really challenging features about something as audacious as sending a mission to Mars.
I will retire really happily if we find that there's life on Mars, and probably with a Nobel Prize, because this is one of the holy grails of science, to actually see whether there could be life anywhere else in the universe. I do dream about Mars occasionally and what we might get on the surface, and once we got to the surface, is it going to work or not? But yeah, I mean, with these things, it's a risky business. It's high risk and high reward, because when we get to the surface correctly and start drilling to look for signs of life on Mars, it will all be worthwhile.
Personally, I think there is probably life elsewhere in the universe and possibly elsewhere in our solar system, but whether we find it with this mission or not is maybe a more complex question.
One of the wonderful things about Razor, I think, is that I don't have to talk at somebody and interview somebody and expect them to talk straight into a camera. I'm allowed to tell the story standing alongside them, and I think what that does is it's a more comfortable atmosphere, so they don't feel like they're being interrogated, and it becomes more of a conversation. And I think when something becomes a conversation, then it's natural that you become enthusiastic and you sort of come to life. And that's what I find with the people I'm speaking to on camera, that it's almost like the camera's not there. And they're just, having a chat and telling me, yeah, just tell me all about what you're doing here. This seems, and when they pick up on your enthusiasm, they become more engaged as well. And I think that's one of the wonderful things about the show. It's so, yeah, the viewer's not on the other side of the television. I like to think that they're sort of alongside me, listening in on this conversation. Rather than looking at it from an engineering point of view and a science point of view, looking at the big picture of it's going into the solar system.
Yeah, and it's been a big part of so many people's lives. You work on it for such a long time. Of course, you kind of build a bond to it and you personify it, and like you say,
it is your baby.
You want to see it find love, you want it to find happiness, all of these things. It does feel like a member of the family almost, and then you're sending it into the big bad universe and hoping that it does well, and it's going to send you back exciting postcards of its new life on Mars.
I can hear a tack going on here.
That's injection.
Okay, can you talk us through what's...
Yes, so here is Kel.
she's injecting breast cancer, right?
Yeah,
breast
right.
cancer cells. And so this is the needle.
Oh, wow.
And then there it is. So these are the cells injected in the fish.
I just want to say that what Raquel is doing here, this is a pinprick of a fish, and she's somehow getting under the skin and injecting thousands of microscopic cells. I mean, this is she like your sniper of injectors?
Oh, yes,
she's
for
like
sure.
a sniper injector. There's genius going on here. It's
For
incredible.
sure.
What always amazes me with these scientists and researchers is the dedication, because they don't know if they're going to get an answer in their lifetime, for many of them. So it's a very selfless act, and they're very selfless people, because you may talk to a lead researcher about the science that they're working on, and they're always at pains to say, my team, and my team. I'll ask a question about you, and they'll say, and my team. Because there's a huge team of people working on this, that having to do all the different experiments and the late nights and the early mornings and the endless setbacks. So some of your patients have been taking part in the trial. What's their reaction?
Well, I think the reaction is they are really, really interested on the results, and most of them, they want to learn what is the result of their tumor in the zebrafish. Of course, they understand that they cannot refuse, so far, or even accept different treatments just because of these results, because they are still early phase results. So it's really, really a very interesting connection between the patients, the surgical or even the multidisciplinary team, and the fundamental researchers who are doing this. It's really good.
If we are able to personalize therapy, we can do smaller trials, just looking at the drug that seems the right one for those group of patients, and we will have a response much faster, and we will be able to get these new drugs from the research arena to the clinical practice faster.
In my everyday life, I have a problem and I work steadily through it and get to the end of it, and it might take me a day. These people are spending years and they don't know if they're going to get the answer at the end of it. So the dedication and the selflessness of the researchers and the professors and their teams is quite incredible. According to NASA, the levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere are higher than they've been at any time in the past 400,000 years. Scientists think one way of reducing levels is right under our noses. I'm Emma Keeling in Iceland, where they're taking carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and turning it into stone. I feel so overwhelmed, like a lot of people, when you look at all the stories about climate change, and you feel so helpless. And going to Iceland and seeing that they're taking carbon dioxide and they've figured out a way to store it underground and basically turn it to stone.
So this is a core we drilled into the storage formation a few years back. And then we have the white veins and spots in between, and that's mineralized CO2. And turns out that what we inject is turned into rock like this in less than 2 years. So it's a very efficient and effective process, permanently getting rid of CO2.
On a big scale, we looked at all of the oceanic ridges. Of course, it's probably not economically to do it, but you could take all the CO2 from burning of all fossil fuel that we know of on Earth. You could take that CO2 and you can store it into all of the oceanic ridges. There is enough storage capacity for it, but we will not do it. It's not economical to do it. You will find the solution closest to the source. For example, if you are burning here, you have a coal-fired power plant here in Northern Europe, it might be best just to put it in the sedimentary basins here close to Norway. Here in Iceland, we might build power plants just to drive air cleaning systems. And that might be a great role where carpfish could play in the future, simply cleaning the air for the better of mankind.
There are people working very hard behind the scenes to come up with solutions. And I know that I believe a lot more in science, I think, than I've ever done. And I certainly put a lot more faith into it as well. Just knowing that those people are working so hard.